200 feet under the North Atlantic, there is a steel tube about as wide as a small bedroom, and 50 men are going to live inside it for the next 60 days without ever once going outside. The hatch closes at the top of the conning tower, and a hand wheel spins it shut. Below that hatch, the boat is 220 feet long, and in the widest part of the pressure hull, about 15 feet across. And almost none of that 15 feet belongs to the crew. Torpedoes take it. Batteries take it. 2 diesel engines the size of trucks take it. What is left is a corridor you cannot walk down without turning your shoulders. The air already smells of diesel. In 2 weeks, it will smell of things much worse. Hold 3 things for the next few minutes. First, this boat has 2 toilets for 50 men, and for the opening weeks of the patrol, only one of them can be used, and the reason why explains exactly what these men ate. Second, there are not enough beds on board, not close, and the bunk you were assigned depended on how junior you were and how comfortable you were sleeping on top of a live torpedo. Third, in April 1945, a German submarine was lost off the coast of Scotland because of its toilet. That is not a joke told in a bar. It is in the record. This is how U-boat crews ate, slept, and survived 60 days sealed under the Atlantic. Start with the machine, because everything the men suffered was decided by it. The workhorse of the German submarine force was the Type VII, and by the middle of the war, the standard version, the VIIC, was the most produced submarine in history. It displaced around 750 tons submerged. It carried 14 torpedoes. On the surface, it ran on 2 supercharged diesels at about 17 knots, and submerged, it crawled on batteries at 7. And it could not stay under indefinitely because those batteries had to be recharged, and the only way to recharge them was to come up into the air and run the diesels. That single fact governs the whole life of the crew. A U-boat was not really a submarine in the way we now use the word. It was a surface torpedo boat that could hide, and it had to surface, usually at night, to breathe and to charge, and that was when it died. 50 men, give or take, went into that hull. 4 officers, a few senior petty officers, and then the rest, the machinists and torpedo men and radio operators, most of them in their early 20s. The commander was often 25 or 26. Nobody aboard was old. So what did they eat? For the first 2 weeks of a patrol, extraordinarily well, and it is the strangest sight in the whole boat. A U-boat leaving port on a long patrol was loaded past every sane limit, because there is no resupply out there, and there is no galley worth the name. The kitchen was a compartment roughly the size of a phone booth with 2 hot plates and an oven, and one cook fed 50 men out of it, 3 meals a day for 2 months, at an angle, in a moving sea. Fresh food went wherever there was air. Hams and sausages hung from the pipes overhead in the passageway, so that men going forward on watch ducked and pushed through hanging meat. Crates of eggs, sacks of potatoes, netted bags of lemons went into every corner, under bunks, on top of the torpedo reloads. And when the boat had swallowed all it could hold, the crew filled the second toilet with food and locked the door. That is the first promise paid. 2 heads for 50 men, and one of them is a pantry, which means that for the opening stretch of the patrol there is precisely 1 working toilet on board, and there is a queue for it, and men learn the timetable of 50 other men's bodies whether they want to or not. The good eating did not last. Bread was the first thing to go, because the humidity inside a sealed steel hull is total. Condensation ran down the walls and dripped from the pipes onto the bunks continuously, and within about a week the loaves went furry with white mold. The crews had a name for it. They called the mold rabbits, and you did not throw the bread away because there was no more bread. You scraped the rabbits off and you ate what was underneath. After that, the boat lived out of tins for 6 weeks. Tinned meat, tinned vegetables, tinned bread, baked to survive, and a coffee substitute that men described with real hatred. Fresh water was rationed to drinking and cooking and nothing else. Nobody washed. Nobody shaved. Nobody changed clothes because the clothes would never dry. Which produces the thing every survivor mentions before any battle: the smell. Diesel oil, unwashed men, wet wool, mold, the bilges, the battery gases, rotting food, and, layered over all of it, cologne, because the crews bought eau de cologne by the bottle and splashed it around the compartments in a doomed attempt to cover the rest. Men who served said you never got the smell out of your skin. Dock workers claimed they could identify a returning U-boat crew from across a pier by scent alone. Now sleep, and this is where the design shows its teeth. There were bunks for roughly half the men aboard, so the crew hot bunked. You did not have a bed. You had a turn in someone else's, and you climbed into bedding still warm and still damp from the man who had just left it for watch. The routine ran in 4-hour blocks, 4 on and 8 off. But the 8 off were not 8 hours of sleep, because when the alarm sounded, every man went to his station regardless of what he was doing, and on an active patrol, the alarm sounded constantly. And where you slept was a matter of rank. The most junior men, the crew called the forward torpedo room the Lord's quarters, slept in the bow compartment, in bunks slung directly above the spare torpedoes, sharing the room with several tons of explosive that had to be hauled out and manhandled into the tubes whenever a reload was ordered. When that happened, your bed was disassembled around you and you got out of the way. That is the second promise paid, and it explains something about how these boats fought. The commander did not have a cabin. He had a bunk in a nook behind a green curtain, a few feet from the control room, positioned so he could be at the periscope in seconds. There was no privacy anywhere on board for anyone, including the man in command, and that was deliberate. Everything on a Type VII was arranged so that the boat could be fighting within seconds of being asleep. And then there was the part of the patrol that the food and the bunks were only the setting for. When an escort found you, the boat went deep and went silent. Every machine that could be shut down was shut down. No cooking, no talking, no movement. Men lying still in the dark, listening to the propellers of a destroyer pass overhead, and the sonar pings walking across the hull. Depth charges did not usually kill by direct hit. They killed by shock, springing rivets, cracking glass, knocking out lighting, starting leaks in a hull already flexing under the pressure of the deep. And the longer the boat stayed down, the worse the air became. Carbon dioxide climbed. Men were issued potash cartridges to breathe through, chemical filters that scrubbed the exhaled air, and even so, the standard advice was to lie down and stop moving, because a man lying still uses less oxygen than a man who is frightened and pacing. Crews stayed down like this for 12 hours, 16 hours, longer, with the temperature climbing and the lights on emergency power and the paint sweating off the walls. Which brings us to April 1945, and to the third thing I asked you to hold, because it shows exactly how thin the margin was. The Type 21 and the later boats had been fitted with a new high-pressure toilet, one that could be flushed at depth rather than only near the surface. And it was a genuinely complicated piece of equipment with a sequence of valves that had to be operated in the right order. Get it wrong, and the sea comes in, because on the other side of that plumbing is the entire North Atlantic pressing down. On 14 April 1945, U-1206 was submerged off Peterhead on the Scottish coast under the command of Captain Lieutenant Carl Adolf Schlitt. The toilet malfunctioned. Water flooded in, and it ran down into the compartment below, where the boat's batteries were. And when seawater reaches lead-acid batteries, the reaction produces chlorine gas. Now the crew is not fighting flooding. They are fighting poison gas filling a sealed hull. And there is exactly one way out of that. which is up. U-1206 surfaced in daylight in coastal waters patrolled by British aircraft and was spotted and attacked. Schlitt scuttled his boat. Men died, several drowned or were lost in the escape, and the survivors were captured or mated ashore. A submarine, its captain and its crew, undone by a valve sequence on a lavatory. That is the whole story of the U-boat war in miniature. These were extraordinarily dangerous machines to serve in, even when nobody was shooting at you. And the numbers say so with a clarity that is difficult to sit with. Roughly 40,000 men served in the German U-boat arm during the Second World War. Around 30,000 of them did not come home. That is a death rate near 3/4, the worst suffered by any major fighting service on any side in the entire war. If you were one of the 50 men going down that hatch, the arithmetic said you were more likely to die than to live, and the men knew it. They knew the boats leaving alongside them were not all coming back, and the end came fast. In the spring of 1943, the escorts finally had what they needed: better radar, aircraft that could cover the mid-ocean gap, hunter groups, and code breaking. In May 1943 alone, the Germans lost 41 U-boats. Karl Dönitz, the admiral commanding the force, lost his own son, Peter, aboard U-954 in that same month. And before May was out, he pulled his boats out of the North Atlantic altogether. The hunting was over. What was left was 3 more years of sailing out anyway. So picture the return. 60 days after that hatch closed, it opens. 50 men come up onto the deck of a boat that has been under them the entire time. Filthy, bearded, in clothes that have been wet for 2 months, blinking at a sky they have not stood under since the spring. They will be scrubbed and fed and given leave, and then, in a few weeks, a hand wheel will spin shut over their heads again, and the whole thing starts over, and the odds do not reset. If you want more of these, subscribe.